Hello, I'm Herm Gailey. I'm here with Melanie Hauk. Melanie is now 17, right? I've known her since she was about 10, and about 5 years ago she started coming around here and wouldn't leave. And she has the distinction of maybe being the only kid in recent memory that I didn't manage to run off, or who didn't have the good sense to run off on their own. We're going to cut in a little bit of video from one of the earlier horses she brought over, and I think you'll see that she has really developed as a rider. And then he just decides he's going to trot. And he's slinging his head around like he's just looking for a bit of a challenge. And there he goes. And Mel, do whatever you need to do to save your life. This is Kit, right? Yes. And tell us a little bit about Kit, Melanie. I'm going to move over here a little closer so that my mic picks you up too.
He's a 3-year-old paint horse gelding. He's by the sweet spot and out of a distantly bred rugged lark mare. He has about 68, 69 rides on him. Yep. He's progressing pretty well.
So he's basically performance bred.
Yep. And
the thing that I think is great is, I don't think, has anybody else been on his back?
One person.
One person. So, and that wasn't me, and that wasn't a trainer. This is all Melanie's work here. Part of what I'd love to see is the next generation coming along and doing some of the things that I had the good luck to do, and that is starting some horses and maybe even finishing some. And we're well on the road here. So what we're going to work on today is, I have a set of logs laid out, and I'm just going to ride over here. Mel, you can ride along if you'd like so you can see the configuration, but I think you know how it lays out. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 logs laid out. Now, you often find cross rails, or not cross rails, but ground rails for, say, ranch riding or trail. Generally, they are spaced much more closely together. What I've found, though, is as you introduce your horse to ground rails, sometimes you're better off not having the rails too close together and not being too particular or too cautious with your horse. Rather, send your horse over them and let them figure out how to be responsible for their own feet. So Melanie's horse, I think, had one short session where we tested him out on this, and he was getting the idea. This mare has done ground rails, but the idea to do this came from a video I watched by a man named Nick Dowers, who is an extraordinary hand. He wasn't using it for this purpose. He was using it to get his horses a little more responsible for their feet so they'd stop more responsively by using these ground rails. And it was a pretty cool thing he was doing, but also recognized that just doing it for its own benefit gets your horse better on their feet and better with ground rails, so that when you space them more closely, you'll find your horse paying a lot better attention. So there's an example of flexibility at its best. I hope that shows up on camera. He's scratching his ear with his foot. So when somebody says their horse is stiff, they're not talking about him. So what we do is we'll get out in here. We may even cross the driveway because I have the luxury of not having sides on the pen. Get the horse on a good free trot and trot on through. Now, if the horse had never seen rails before, yeah, I'd walk him over, but a good free trot is helpful. Not pussyfooting along. Get them moving forward, get them reaching, get them to where they have to really think about where they're putting their feet. So you want to give that a try, and then when you get through, just loop around there and come back in. And if he crashes, let him crash. Don't fall over, but let him have his little crash. So free him up, let him trot right on through there. And you can see he's searching and he's breaking to a trot or to a lope sometimes. That's okay, because he's learning to be responsible for himself. We micromanage our horses way too much. That's it, just keep him trotting on through. Keep his feet moving. There. See him starting to take responsibility already. Tells you he's a nice horse. also tells you that this does get their attention. So why don't you start him out there just a little further? Just get him freed up and heading for those things. Now you don't have to be doing a warm blood trot, but you want to be doing a good strong ranch trot when you hit it. Yep, and leave him as free-faced and free-legged as you can. There. So he clunked a little bit, but he didn't lope, he didn't get tangled up. So loop him around. Now come in and cut in, make another circle there, and then cut in at the second pole. Because what we do all too much with our horses is we bore them to death. So we're going to do things a little different, keep him thinking about where he's putting his feet. So he has to catch this at an angle. Good. Now, if he continues to bump those logs, then stop him between logs, turn him back, and trot him back the other direction. So then he has to repeat it. So he's continuing to make progress there. I would love to see him go through clean one time, and then we'll give him a break. Good. Good, little touch. Okay, so take him through, go about halfway through, stop him so you don't get tangled up, turn him and bring him right back through so he doesn't know what's going to happen next. That's okay, just turn him right back across that log, make him crawl over it. It's not going to hurt him one little bit. And you notice he went clean on those next two logs, then he got a little sloppy again. Take him back through. If he gets tangled up, stop him gently, turn him back. Better. Good. I'd give him a break. What you don't want to do is continue to do this again and again and again until they begin to feel defeated. Now this little mare is pretty careful of her feet, maybe to excess. She's likely to feel that this is threatening to her life, but we'll see how she does. I'm going to get her on a nice trot and do the same thing. Now you notice some of the logs are up on that little berm, so they're 3 or 4 inches off the ground. One of them's a little bit askew. They're about 12 feet apart, and I found that to be a pretty good distance apart. So I'll just get her going in a little bit of a trot. Say, and I'm just going to lean up over her. And you can see she clunked on one and got out of position, so she clunked on a second one too. So you can see the importance of cadence. If she had been more regular, I don't think she'd have hit any. So as long as she wants to keep banging on them, we'll keep going through. So I don't know whether you could see or hear it. She brushed that last one and she sort of touched one other one, but not too bad. Now if she keeps pulling away from the logs, I'm going to steer her back in. Better. Meanwhile, Melanie's horse is recharged. Come trotting. And if you do this till they win and not until they lose, it becomes sort of the game that they enjoy. Yeah, he had a couple of little brushes, but so much better than he was when we started him 10 minutes ago. I'd take him back through another time. Now see, that's good for it. Now if you had a horse that was extremely klutzy, that you thought would fall, he might not be a candidate for this. I also just don't know how this would work if you tried it on a gaited horse. So he ticked one log, but he was more careful because he had that, what he thought of as a near-death experience. Yeah, take him through, and if he would hit one kind of hard, then turn him and go back through. I would turn toward the fence. Use that to help you. There, a little sloppy, turn him to the right, and go on through. Now take him up through and zigzag him just a tiny bit, steer him just a tiny bit as you go through, so he has to really think.
So at the beginning of the video series, I committed to showing the good, the bad, and the ugly. This was ugly. Let's look at it again. This was my mistake. Gave this young horse a little too much to handle when I said to steer him a bit through the logs. He wasn't ready for that. He was already doing the best he could. I should have seen that. I didn't. No harm done. It was a mistake. You live with those mistakes. You just try like heck not to repeat them. So there it is. The good, the bad, and in this case, the ugly.
Let him sort of think that through, because that was just an awkward move on his part. Nobody got hurt, but it will make your horse more aware of their feet. I would take him up here and make a clean start, I think. And just keep him on a nice trot. Very close to perfection there. He had that one bump. Now what do you think? You think that's going to be good enough for today, or you want to take him through again?
I'd like to take him back one more time because it seems like he's hitting going that way.
Okay. So maybe make a loop up there so you've got some momentum before you start. That wasn't perfect, but I'll tell you what I liked. He was making adjustments. He was adjusting his stride, and he hasn't perfected that. He doesn't completely know what the process is, but that effort is what will build the perfection later. I would call that good, because that effort, you can see the wheels in his head turning, and that's so important. And he had a little bit of a frightening experience there, but it was a wake-up call too. Nobody's hurt, and it will make him a nicer horse and more aware of his feet because we've challenged him in a more controlled environment here. So that's something that you can work on at home. Again, consider your horse, consider yourself. If your horse gets halfway through and he looks like he's trying to do a nosedive, well, maybe he wasn't the right candidate. But I really haven't had one yet that didn't improve from doing this. And don't do it to death. Just do it a few times till they show you some improvement, or better yet, get through clean. Then go do something else. Give it a try and let us know how it works for you.